Welcome to the show. Today, I want to talk about a question that I get commonly asked. Is there enough work for licensed tax professionals to handle IRS collections cases? And I'm here to tell you, heck yeah is the answer. So if you didn't know that the IRS actually released the IRS Data Book, and it usually comes out somewhere about March or April of each year for the previous fiscal year. Our federal government is on a fiscal year end of September 30th. And so when this is being released, we're just past the fiscal year 24 is what that would be. And so the IRS gives the information data based on what has transpired basically in that previous 12-month period, ending in the fiscal year as of September 30th of that year. The most recent available data is for fiscal year 23. Now I'm going to give you some data giving you from table 27 of the IRS Data Book. You can go look this up yourself if you're interested. Just type in Google IRS Data Book 2023. There's a actually PDF copy, and then there's the web version where you can download Excel spreadsheets that basically have the data. Here's the data. Let's start with the taxpayer delinquent account. So at the beginning of the year, there was over 9.3 million cases of delinquent, these people who owe the IRS money at the beginning of the year. The number of new accounts added was 7.7 million, and the number of accounts closed was 5.7 million. The number was 7,735,000 versus 5,739,000. So that was an increase in the number of cases by 2 million. So we started with the 9.3 million to start with. We end up with 11.3 million cases at the end. Now it says the balance of assessed tax penalties and interest on those accounts is over $158 million. So if you did the math, and I'll take the number of cases that start the beginning of this year. So if I take 11,375,720, and I believe there's about 50,000 tax professionals that handle the number of cases. If we divide, that's 227 cases per professional. When you factor in that the average tax professional can generally handle at one point in time on their own 40 cases, that 227 is more than what any one individual can handle in well over the course of the year. You can handle more if you have paraprofessionals that can help you. So it's nicer if they're licensed tax professionals that can help you so that you are not always the one who's pulling transcripts, calling the IRS. Now, if we take it a step further and look at the number of delinquent returns, during the course of the tax year, there was the number of delinquent investigations was $2.3 million. Number of new investigations was almost 60,000. Number closed was almost 350,000. So that left the number of ending inventory of over 2 million cases of, and that would be unique individuals, businesses that have outstanding returns. Now factor in that the average person that has a tax problem will usually have at least 1 to 2 unfiled returns. That's going to add to the cha-ching in your pocket when it comes to preparing or the fees that are involved. For example, let's say you handle the investigation liability. Let's say that's $1,500, for example. Let's say if you charge right, you should probably charging maybe somewhere about $800,000-$900,000 per return. Let's make it easier and just go for $1,000. So if I charge $1,500, I've got 2 returns at $1,000. So that's already $3,500 that I'm dealing with. And then let's say you can get them into a relatively easy, streamlined installment agreement where you don't need to submit financials. So you charge them maybe another $500 or $1,000. So you're looking at somewhere about $4,000 to $5,000 on that case. And at the end of the day, you'll have, let's say 4, 7, maybe 8 hours into that. So when you look at it, let's just call it $4,000, 8 hours. That's the equivalent of $500 an hour. That's not how I build it, but That's the equivalent of $500 an hour. Now, how many of you would like to earn $500 an hour? I would assume most of you would love that, because if you're charging by the form, if you're charging by the hour, even if you're value billing, I could hazard a guess that many of you aren't charging anywhere near that rate in the equivalent of $1 per hour. That's on the order of what an attorney would get. I'm not gouging the client. I know people out there that feel that they should be charging their fees based on the amount that the taxpayer owes. At the Tax Resolution Academy, we don't believe that. Being on the IRS Whisperer podcast, I don't believe in that either. Now, can you charge more? Yes. Is it worth, say, a 10% or 20% of what they owe? I don't feel that's necessarily right. But if that's your decision, you want to do that and feel that you can get it, I've heard of people getting that, then by all means, great. It's your conscience. You have to live with that. And what if that person says you were charging them an unconscionable fee? And now you have to present that to the IRS and say that what you charge was a reasonable fee. Okay. So from that perspective, now here's a word from our sponsor. Hey there, tax pros. Tired of going alone against the IRS? Are you ready to transform from a mild-mannered accountant into a fearless IRS representation warrior? Then buckle up and come join the Tax Resolution Academy. We'll teach you how to face audits with the cool composure of a cucumber in a refrigerator, negotiate offers and compromise like a seasoned poker player, and tackle tax liens with the finesse of a cat burglar. In just a few weeks, you'll be the Sherlock Holmes of the tax representation world. Solve mysteries that would make even the toughest revenue officer scratch their head. Don't let your clients face the IRS alone. Become their knight in shining armor, or at least in a well-pressed suit. Enroll now and learn to speak IRS fluently. No Rosetta Stone required. Now back to the show. If we look at a few more collection data, let's look at offers and compromises. So the number of offers and compromises received in fiscal year 23 is 30,163. Yes, that is not a misstatement. It's 30,163. When you look at how many offers were accepted, it was 12,711. Yes, 12,711. So if I take the 12,711 and divide that by the number of closed cases that I gave you earlier of 5,739,000, that comes to 0.22 of 1% of all cases are closed through an offer and compromise. So that's this many out of, this many, a much larger number. And of the offers accepted, they collected over $214,000. Now, again, looking at the number of federal tax liens filed was $179,000. That's the first time we've had an uptick in a number of years. The year number before was 157. As of 15 years ago, they had filed over 1 million. So it's a slight uptick. That's obviously good for business from a collections perspective, because once they start getting tax liens filed, that's when people start making moves. When we look at the number of levies requested on third parties, that was a slight increase of 286,000. So it's not a large number, but again, that's another thing that motivates people to come and see you, and hopefully you know how to handle that. And when we look at the number of seizures, usually physical, tangible property, there were 65 of those. Of all the millions of cases that are out there, they only had 65. You could look at that in many different ways, but at the end of the day, seizing assets is no longer a big part of what the IRS does. Back in the day, prior to the Revenue Reconciliation Act of 98, that was a big thing that the IRS did, and a lot of that has been taken away from them, and it has to be in egregious situations in terms of that. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you about here is installment agreements. When we look at the installment agreements, again, we start at the beginning inventory that there was 3,700,000 people in installment agreements. There was 2,000,000, almost 700,000 of new ones established. Now, there were taxpayers that got to pay in full. They finally paid it all off. Was 1,685,000. And so that left an ending inventory 4 million people that are in installment agreements. The amount collected in these cases was over $14 million. When you look at that many people got into new installment agreements, almost 3 million. That's a quarter of the number I mentioned earlier in a number of open cases. When you say the average is probably $2,000, $3,000 in terms of an installment agreement, obviously it can be higher, it can be lower. But when you look at that, then many of them have unfiled returns. You've got to replace SFRs, a lot of research. Sometimes you're involved with doing a lien subordination or a lien discharge. There's a lot of money still to be had out there. How many of you could use even one case a month and you got an average of $4,000 a month? That's $48,000 a year of extra revenue that you could have above and beyond. They're usually not as involved, especially if you have staff people and more specifically licensed staff who can help you manage these cases and create systems around that. There's a lot of good revenue to have. If you wanted to take it a step further, you can make hundreds, if not potentially millions of dollars. Make the millions and need to shift your practice more to being a representation firm as opposed to a tax prep firm, and where tax prep is more of a secondary thing that you offer. Or you grow your firm and have people in both areas, you can do that. So looking at the data, it goes to show you that there's plenty of work out there for tax professionals to enter into handling representation cases. And when you factor in, you may figure a few thousand enter into handling representation cases each year. There's me and others out there who are teaching how to do this, how to handle these types of cases. There's plenty of work out there for you to do. If you have any further questions, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to help you with whatever I can. And otherwise, I would definitely encourage you to join the Tax Resolution Academy, where we show you how to find these clients. We show you how to sell to them. We give you some cheat sheets and other checklists in order to properly handle these types of cases in a systematic format so that you don't miss dates, you don't miss deadlines or any other issues, and you have happy clients that can leave you good testimonials and reviews, which is a lifeblood of a lot of the work that we do. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Until next time, I hope you have a great day.